Hi, my name is Leigh DeLyser, and I'm currently the executive director at Computer Science for All, a nonprofit focused on bringing computer science education to schools all over the United States. But my journey started a long time ago, and I'm here to talk to you about the winding pathways that hopefully you can be inspired to take in order to help your community or maybe even solve a challenge in the world. I grew up in rural America. I grew up in a log cabin my father built half a mile down a dirt road in upstate New York. And in middle school, I got the opportunity to participate in Science Olympiad. And it was one of those things that inspired me to see myself as more. Someone who had fun solving problems, thinking about challenges, and imagining the way the world could be just a little bit different. So my Science Olympiad experience in middle school inspired me to do other things, to do mathletes, math counts, as well as Future Business Leaders of America in high school. And like many young women, I encountered obstacles, people who didn't think that maybe the next step was for me. And in particular, my high school guidance counselor, when I walked into her office my senior year of high school and asked for a book of scholarships, because my dad drove a truck for a living, and I knew I was going to need some help paying for college. She looked at me and she said, "You want to go to college?" And I said, "Yes." And my experience with Science Olympiad and all of these other things gave me the confidence to believe in myself, to know that my skills and my problem solving ability and my interests were valuable and valued by others outside of my house, my tiny little community, or even my school. And so all of that together helped me become the person I am today and build this organization that's now working with school districts all over the United States to help inspire the next generation of problem solvers and make sure that our systems don't underestimate the kids who are in them.
I love your story, Leanne, because I think it is something that will resonate with a lot of our participants. Can you talk a little bit about what happened to you after high school and what your educational path and career path was after that?
Yeah. So, like many smart young women coming out of rural communities, the biggest employer in a rural community is almost always the school district. And so I studied to be a math teacher. And while I was in school, as I mentioned before, I had to pay for a good portion of that myself. So I worked. And I worked for multiple departments on campus and started building database systems. I decided that computers were fun and they were something that I could do. And so I added a computer science minor. And when I started teaching math and computer science. And it was so much fun to play and imagine new ways to build things in the world. Long before artificial intelligence was a watchword, my advanced placement students were teaching a computer to play blackjack as one of our assignments. And we really tried to think about, how do I take these things that I'm learning in my little classroom and the work that I'm doing with students and bring it to a bigger stage. So I wrote a couple of textbooks. I also got engaged with the Computer Science Teachers Association and got invited by a very prestigious university, Carnegie Mellon, to come and be a visiting faculty member in their computer science department. Now, this was after 10 years of being a teacher. This doesn't happen overnight. And so after those 10 years of really working on myself, I went to CMU. I taught computer science for their freshmen in their introductory classes, and I applied to their PhD program. And they accepted me, and I did a PhD in computer science and cognitive psychology, thinking about how computers can give feedback to people who are learning, and especially learning computer science.
Wow, I love too that that you're demonstrating this kind of alternative pathway. I think a lot of our students think that you go and get your bachelor's degree, then you go get your master's degree, and then you go and get your PhD, and then life can begin. But I think for many professionals, that takes a winding pathway. You might not have known at 22 that this was your passion. This is what you wanted to bring to the world.
On that pathway for just a
Yes.
second.
Yeah.
I was on the admissions committee at CMU for many years, admitting students to their graduate program. Most of our applicants had a gap between undergrad and graduate school. And our strongest applicants came having spent that gap, narrowing their focus. Undergrad is about a liberal arts education. You get to explore the world and see what is out there. But unless you have a very focused path in your undergraduate years and you're able to like zoom in on the change that you want to make in the world, or the learning, the knowledge that you're going to add to the community, it's sometimes really hard to apply to a PhD program and say like this professor who does something very narrow and very small, this is what I want to work on or what I want to do. And so that time in between, being able to tell your story about what problem you want to solve or what inspires you actually makes you really attractive to a high quality PhD program, way more than someone who's like, I just want to keep studying science. It's fun.
All right, tell us a little bit about CS for All and what gave you the motivation to start something like this, and then what keeps you going, and what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So CS for All stands for Computer Science for All. And I like to say we are not the organization that makes the cupcakes, but we're going to tell you how to find them, just like Google Maps. We are a membership of over 800 organizations and individuals focused on computer science education in K through 12. And on today, when we're recording this in 2022, just about half of our schools in the United States even offer computer science as a course that students can take.
Wow.
Now, if you think about that for just a second, you and I are talking here on a computer. Computers have empowered and enabled so much in the world. And while not every person is going to need to be a computer scientist or a software engineer, we're all going to need to think about computers as we work on solving the world's problems. When we think about the UN sustainability goals, solving world hunger, not only do we need the scientists who will make drought and blight resistant crops, we also need the computer scientists who are going to model weather patterns, who are going to create apps so that communities can retrieve food from restaurants that were unused so it can be donated to soup kitchens, right? There are many different ways to attack a problem, and it's going to need computer science and computing to really get to solutions that help us change the world in the future.
Mm-hmm. So your goal is really to support those schools in finding great programs, starting great programs, supporting the teachers who are doing the work, and getting students ready.
Not only schools, but after school programs too. Did you know that the Girl Scouts has a series of badges in cybersecurity and computer programming and app development?
I did not.
Absolutely. Local community centers now have maker spaces, as well as opportunities for kids to learn all kinds of different things and play basketball. And so for all of you who are listening to this and hopefully getting a little bit inspired, we want to think about what you see when you look around you. What is not only in the room you're sitting in while you're watching this video, but what opportunities you have down the street, around the corner, or even in online and virtual spaces to help you explore the world and find things that you want to do.
I love that. Thank you, Leanne. I think what your story brings to our fabric of stories in Science Olympiad is that, yes, you are a STEM professional, but you're also a connector of people and resources. And so in science, it's not just about what you know and what you can do. It is also about kind of harnessing the collective power of others. Also, we need those people to think like, what's happening? How can I connect it? How can I put it together? So you are a computer in and of yourself, as well as a computer scientist.
Well, I once won a radio competition. It was call in and stump the DJ, and they would give you tickets to a concert. And I called in and I asked them, where did the term computer come from? And computer actually, the term, the very first time it was used was for women who were part of the Army Reserve Services during World War II. and they couldn't go and fight on the battlefields. But what they could do is do the math, do the calculations for trajectories for how high the soldiers needed to aim the big guns on the battlefield in order to shoot the ballistics. And the problem is that every little thing changes it. Wind, temperature, all of those weather patterns, the slope of the land. And so there were literally rooms and rooms of these women who were doing mathematical calculations to fill these little books that they would then ship off to the front in Europe to help our soldiers on the battlefield. And that was the very first time they used the term computer. And I think that just like those women who were thinking about all the variables, all the things, and coming up with ways to communicate and share information, we still try and honor that today. And so for me, the early things that science taught me about trying something, making a hypothesis, experimenting, figuring out what works and taking that forward and leaving the other things behind are still a part of what I do every day at CS for All.
Thank you, Leanne, for sharing your time and expertise and thoughts with us. And we hope that many of our students will be inspired by your story. How can they find CS for All if they're interested in kind of taking a peek at what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. We're available on the web, csforall.org. And if you go to our member directory, there's lots and lots of fun things that you can play with for computer science education, or that you can share with your teacher for activities to do in your classroom. So please go take a peek at the website. Encourage your teacher to take a look at our website, and also, try something small. Start a new club. Encourage others to try, and don't forget that it takes time, and not sit quietly in rooms, and people will eventually recognize you for the value you bring.